but really just embrace the suck. Whatever you're doing, it's going to suck, no matter what you're doing. If I'm going to go out and run 4 miles tomorrow, at some point I'm going to go, this sucks. But find a way to enjoy that. Somehow, embrace it, enjoy it, and overcome it.
You are now tuning in to the Roughnecks Podcast with your host, Cole Nixon. Much love.
What's up, everybody, and thank you for tuning in to this week's episode of the Roughnecks Podcast. I'm your host, Cole Nixon, and my goal of this podcast is to bring on leaders in the world of athletics, coaching, entrepreneurship, and just life in general to try and motivate us all to be better. We shouldn't strive to be millionaires in terms of money, but by the millions of lives that we can impact. If you want to be a guest or have a guest idea that you would like to hear from, then shoot me an email at roughneckspodcast@gmail.com. Be sure to subscribe, rate, and review if you like this episode. Then head over to our social media and give us a follow on Instagram at Roughnecks Podcast, Twitter at Roughnecks Pod C1, Facebook at Roughnecks Podcast. And then don't forget to subscribe to the Roughnecks YouTube channel as well. As always, be sure to grab the bull by the horns and take control of your life. Let's get into this week's episode. What's up, everybody? We're back with another double episode week, episode 48 today. Before I get into this episode, I want to give a quick introduction to Grace. Grace is our new social media manager. She runs all of our social media. She's actually a podcast guest girlfriend. Ben Warden, the warden's girlfriend, is running my social media for me. Just wanted to give a quick shout out to her and say thank you for everything that she's already done. I'm very excited to see what she has in store for the social media and everything that we have coming. Summer or fall sale coming soon in September. Be on the lookout for that. But joining me today, I have a guest reappearance, and I'm super excited. He was the first ever guest on the Roughnecks Podcast, and he's coming back on to continue with our topic of discipline. Joe Aichele, welcome to the Roughnecks Podcast again.
Yeah, thanks for having me back on. Appreciate it, man.
Yeah, the first round was, we had no clue. Me and Teddy had no idea what we were doing and just kind of went with it. But now it's a little more legit than it was when you were first on. But you still, I believe, have the second or third top episode of all episodes that I've had released in 48 now.
Well, if you want me to go on and just trash Rudy some more, I can do that. But...
So if you want to hear that story, you got to go back to episode 2 of this podcast where Aichele was first on. But me and Aichele, we first met, 2 or 3 years ago. How long has it been since you've been at Ohio Wesleyan now?
2019 was my first season there.
Yeah, so you came in as our new strength and conditioning and wide receivers coach, and that's where we first met. And then through Teddy, we also got a little more closer and found out that we like to have a lot of fun, but a lot of times we're screwing off. But also when we get serious, we get serious. But to give the Roughnecks listeners just a little background on who Joe Aichele is for those of them who don't know who you are.
Yeah, so I grew up in Ohio, grew up in southeastern Ohio, just north of Athens, around in those parts. Played my college ball at Lake Erie College, just east of Paynesville, where we were really good offense the times I was there. Was one of those guys that came in a linebacker. I was a linebacker for probably about a week. Then I got switched to tight end and, got to play every third rep in the offense. And when we went 2 minute, there was no chance you were getting on the field. But it was a lot of fun. I learned a lot about the game. That's really when I got into strength and conditioning even more. Coach Formas is a guy who was actually at OWU before me. He was a coach up there when I was a student. So I learned a lot from him and kind of always knew that I wanted to get into coaching. I did have a career-ending injury, and then my last year I was redshirted. So then my last year I was just a student coach, and that's when I really got into the coaching world. And I knew that this is what I wanted to do for the rest of my life, and kind of been pursuing that ever since. I coached at a high school after I graduated from Lake Erie. I coached at a high school, Crestview High School outside of Ashland, and then after that me and my now wife, was my girlfriend at the time. We moved to Florida. We lived in Florida for about 4 years, coached at 2 different high schools down there. Got a GA job in my alma mater where I played, was a GA for a year, and then become a co-defensive coordinator for a year, and doing strength stuff all throughout. No matter high school level, college level I was at, I was always the guy in charge of the weight room or running the weight room. So yeah, that's pretty much been it.
Yeah, you're one of those people that is always doing something active, it seems like. But before we get into why that's, or kind of why that started, because I think I've heard you talked about the story a little bit on the first episode, but I want to get into it here, like why you started running so much. Because how much are you running now? I know probably the season probably might kill it a little bit, but you still run a crap load.
Yeah, I still, so I'm still like probably, I just started kicking it back up. I go probably like 4 miles a day, probably, and I'll take like every third day off. And I usually match it up to where it's a long scrimmage day, like we had this week or something like that. But yeah, there for a while, I've done a few marathons, but yeah.
But you started that down in Florida, is that correct? Or did you start that up here? Because didn't you,
Yeah.
The whole thing was for a beer?
So yeah. Okay. So if you go all the way back, yes, when I first started running, I moved to Florida, didn't know very many people in the area. There was a bar down the street. They had a 5K. You finish the 5K, you got a free beer. So I was like, all right, yeah, I'll just start running, whatever. And then, after that, I just instantly got hooked.
Mm-hmm.
And I was definitely well over my playing weight once in that time of my life, a few years out of college. And
yeah, I'm already starting to see it. What happens when you don't go to the gym and you don't work out and do anything active? All of a sudden, it catches up to you real quick.
Yeah, real quick. You don't bounce back as quick.
That's why I was like, you know what? I got to go buy a gym membership because that's going to I'm paying for it. So I'm going to go use it. I'm not going to just sit around and not use it. Now, I say that, and I still haven't been disciplined enough, which we'll get into in that topic, but it's getting there. It's weird how life can change and how much more disciplined you need to become. Because once I graduated college, at least, I realized real quick that free time I used to have disappeared. It's real world now. I'm working all the time. And when I'm not working, I'm doing a lot of side jobs. That's just how I am. But that discipline to keep doing the things that you're supposed to be or were doing before and not just giving them up. It's kind of crazy how quick life can change though.
It's time. Your time becomes, it's in multiple places. So you have to figure out where you want to devote your time and then how effective you're going to make that time.
Yeah.
Whatever, if you cut out and, say for me, I got to do 2 hours of recruiting today. I've cut this time out. Now I could get a lot of work done in those 2 hours, or, you know what I mean? It's all how you spend your time. It's got to be quality time. That's for sure. One big thing, because, college, you kind of have your structure built in, when your classes are, when your workouts are. Now you got to create your own schedule, man.
Yeah. That's what's hard is because people even planning this podcast are can you do 3 o'clock? And I'm like, because I don't even know when I'm getting off work every day because I work that manual labor job still. So it's one of those where I'm like, I don't know if I'll be off. So I don't want to say yes and then be the one that bails. So it's really hard to schedule that. But I've been trying so hard to work and all right, I know I'm not going to work later than 4. So I have to schedule things after this. And you learn, because you said, you had that structure in college, especially playing a college sport. We had meetings at this time. You knew exactly where you had to be at whatever time. Now it's you're on your own. You don't have someone telling you, you need to be here at this time. You need to do this at this time. You have to make it for yourself. And that's part of growing up, which sucks, but it's just also having that thing, that college football background, for me at least, helped me a lot manage my time. And that's what sports can do in general.
Yeah. And that's honestly why I do what I do. That's why I do, that's why I do this living is, because I was a guy coming up that I needed that structure.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't a bad kid by any means, and I wasn't a great student. I wasn't a terrible student either. I was just a B student. But if I had that structure, I would be successful. If I wouldn't have had that structure, I don't know, so that's why I'm just grateful to the game of football. And, that's why I continue, pursue this as a career.
Oh, 100%. Because I look at, if I didn't go play college football, I don't honestly know if I'd have made it through college.
Yeah.
But so our topic this month is discipline. The first question I've started with the past 3 guests now is, what is discipline to you?
So discipline to me can really mean anything. It's all where that discipline is concentrated. So like certain things they call being disciplined player, like growing up, I was really into billiards and pole shooting and stuff. And those guys at a professional level, that sport, that's all they do. That's their discipline. You know what I mean? That's what they do when they get up and they go to bed, eat, sleep. That's their discipline. So it's like where you want to put your focus into something, that's whether being disciplined or not. I think it can be applied to anything.
Yeah, it's one of those things that discipline, that's what we talked a lot in these episodes lately, is not just like, you can be disciplined at many different things. And it can change. Your discipline for things are going to change over time. That's where, and like the big thing that I think with discipline as well, correct me if you think differently, but discipline doesn't come from other people. It comes from within. You got to build that discipline up yourself.
Yeah.
And so one of the things I want to ask you is like, how do you get yourself disciplined enough to, have that, be running every day, be working out and doing all that stuff that you do and blocking off that time saying, I need to get 2 hours of recruiting. How did you build up your discipline in your personal view?
I was 100% driven since, I became a student coach after I got injured in college, that I was like, oh, this is what I want to do. And I would, by any means necessary, keep climbing up the rungs of, my coaching career. It was always like, this is what I'm going to do. This is how I'm going to make a living. So I guess once you make those things, so like for me, lifting 4 or 5 times a week, for me, that's what I have to do for my job. Yeah. That's pretty much how I justify it with myself, because I have to take care of my athletes. I want to know what they're going through. So, I work through a lot of the workouts that we do. And I think that's just like, if you have a purpose and you're driven, then discipline is like, that's nothing to me. That's kind of just my job, where somebody who doesn't lift or doesn't work out, they're like, oh my God, you're so disciplined. You lift 4 times a week. And it's like, yeah, my office is also in the weight room. So
that usually helps. Yeah. And I look like it's kind of
that helps a little bit.
Yeah, that's a reoccurring theme now, because that is exactly, I had Carlos on. He was the first one that talked about this discipline topic. And Carlos said, like, you're disciplined when you have a why. When you have your why, like what you're going after, that's what drives you. Like if you have something that's driving you, you're going to become disciplined. It's something that you want to do. And that's where he said, our why, everybody's why is different. Like your why and Carlos's why are completely different. Your why is like, you're a college football coach and that's what you're a strength and conditioning coach. It's just what you do. Carlos, and it's the same thing, working out all the time, but Carlos is like doing the competitions, and it's the same but different. Everybody, and that's the big thing is people say, oh, you're so disciplined. I guarantee those people that say that to you are disciplined just in a whole different area of life. And that's it's okay to be disciplined. We're all gonna be different, and that's okay. Not all of us are want to work out 4 to 5 times a week.
For sure, yeah, 100%. But like I was just always driven to the fact that like this is what I'm going to do. If I'm the strength coach, if I'm sitting over here drinking a Diet Coke and with a big belly or something, that's not really going to send the right messages. You know what I mean? So I'm driven, man. That's 100% right.
Yeah, because I will always remember I was 9 times out of 10, I was in the 7 a.m. lifting group that we had. And you were usually, you've been there for probably 2 hours already, and you're just finishing up your workout when we're all coming in to get ready to start it. And that was one of the things that we look at it and we're like, if he's doing it, why can't we do it? And that's 100%. Where other people can fuel your drive, fuel your discipline. Now, in my opinion, you can't get discipline from anybody else, but they can help fuel it.
Yeah, and that's back, and this might be a little off topic, but like you guys coming in, me lifting like that in the morning. Now, like I've been through a full lift, so it's not like I'm sitting there ordering you guys to do this regimen, do this workout, whatever. It's like, I kind of want you guys to feel like I'm in it with you. I'm in the shit with you. I'm putting in the work with you. I'm not going to tell you how to do it. I can show you how to do it.
Mm-hmm.
That's always kind of been my philosophy with that stuff.
Yeah, and it makes us want to do it more as a player. When you see that coach willing to basically fight with you, like go through those battles with you. Now you can't do anything on game day, but you can sit there at practice. And it was the other thing. We all came in, let's be real, we all came in tired because it's 7 a.m. We don't want to necessarily be doing that at 7 a.m. We came in tired and wanting to just still be in bed, but you always had the juice right away because you already just went through a workout, and it just it always hyped us up. So it's one of those that it's weird, but it's also it's awesome to see. So what time did you usually get to the weight room before our lifts?
Well, I'm always like, standard rule is always an hour before the lift. And then if I want to lift, I'm usually an hour and a half or 2 hours.
And then Teddy's usually strolling in right at 7 o'clock usually.
Yeah, no. Like, our guys are lifting at 9:30 tomorrow, and I'll probably go in there at like 6:30, something like that.
Cool. See, that's the other thing, the discipline to wake up. We just talked about this on today's episode I guess today when we're recording with Justin Witten of Hunting Wolves podcast. And he talked like that discipline to get your ass out of bed is very difficult. It is a pain in the ass. He's like, it's hard. He's like, and I started trying to wake up 10 minutes earlier than I normally do to try and basically train my body to get used to waking up early. And he goes, that 10 minutes is a pain in the ass, but you got to look at it. You got to either get up and be disciplined, or you're going to continue to let everyone else pass you by. And no matter what it is.
I've honestly saying that, and my father that I grew up with, construction worker kind of guy, he's always the first one up. And I feel like for me, having kids, for me, waking up early is not hard anymore at all, because I want to be up before the chaos begins.
Yeah, I have 3 older siblings, and they all say the exact same thing. They're like, waking up is like my brother, I stayed at his house on Saturday night, and he was like, I woke up at like 8 o'clock, and like, I mean, that's not late, but it's also not super early. And I woke up, and he like walked in the door and had like bags of groceries in his hand. I'm like, what time did you get up? He was like 6:30. Yeah. And I was like, what? He goes, and like, he didn't even have his kids that night. He goes, yeah, like I just wake up now. It's just how it is. And it's crazy what kids will do. It'll change your life. It'll change your sleep schedule. That's for sure.
But no, I mean, even before that, even back to workouts and stuff, I was always a driven guy where, I was always a weight room guy, period. But as a player, I always knew that, I was not the most physically talented by any means. So for me, if the minimum is I got to do this in the weight room, I got to go another notch above it. Because I know I don't have the talent factor. I was, very self-aware athlete. It's like, if I'm as strong as possible, as explosive as I can be with that work in the weight room. So it's always being driven, as long as you have a goal and something you're working towards, being disciplined should be the easy part.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like we talked about the why, having that goal. If you want to you sit here and you say, I want to lose weight, make it a specific number and plan it out. That's one thing like we do in our leadership meetings that we have for our team goals back at Ohio Wesleyan. It is like those goals need to be quantifiable. You have to be able to measure them and be able to actually say if you achieved it or not. Like I could sit here and say, I want to lose weight. I could lose 1 pound and I technically succeeded that goal, but it's not exactly what I mean. And that's what people understand. Like everybody knows that's not what I mean, but when you set a goal for why you're going to do something, make sure it's quantifiable, make sure it's something that you can actually measure, and then also take it a step further if you really want to be serious about it and like kind of plan it out. Plan out like, all right, I want to lose weight. I need to work out this many times. I need to cut this, and this out of my diet. And I need to drink this much water, all that kind of stuff. And you will watch that goal and that why become a reality.
Yeah. It's just making like what you know is work, and nobody, at the end of the day, everybody wants comfort. Everybody seeks comfort. Like, even all those workouts, everything you do in the morning. Yes, I love working out, but sometimes, like, I don't want to be here at 5:30 in the morning right now, screaming at the top of my lungs,
Mm-hmm.
But if I'm willing to go through that to achieve my goal of, conference championship, in my mind, that's our biggest goal is to own that conference title outright. And I'll scream my head off for however long I have to at 5:30 a.m. To me, that's not a big deal. I'll run our entire team through the lifts. All of that stuff would all be worth it if you achieve that goal, which again that's your why, man.
Yeah, we're coming back to it. You always have to have your why. So I want to talk a little bit more about coaching, and kind of, so if there was anybody like my age or somewhere around there that is considering getting into coaching, what piece of advice would you give them?
For one, don't be afraid to work for free. Because usually breaking into this, you're going to have to some way, shape or form. And don't overlook the high school level either. There's a lot of guys that come up through the high school level. I was a high school football coach for, 5 years there at the beginning of my career. And it's a great way to get experience and a great way to make recruiting connections if you are wanting to go on, to the college level or whatever your aspirations are. That just network and just getting to know coaches, getting to know people.
Yeah, you said something like don't overlook high school. And I 100% agree with that, because I look back at my high school coaches and, people would kind of knock our coaches all the time. All the parents always like to say it's the coach's fault if you're not winning. But I look at what my coach taught me outside of football, and there's some, like, those high school coaches, those are some of the biggest mentors for young kids when they're going, like, because we're growing up, we have no clue what the hell we're doing with our life. When you're a 16, 17, 18-year-old kid, you have no clue. Let's be real. We all thought we had it figured out, but it was not right. And I look at it and, like, those coaches were some of the biggest mentors to me that helped me grow, turn from this little arrogant 18-year-old kid and transform me into somewhat of a man. I'm still getting there, but somewhat of a man.
Yeah. For me, in my experience, when I moved to Florida and coached high school, I had a head coach come in and says, you can coach a boys weightlifting team, girls weightlifting team, and then you'll handle all the lifting for the football team. Pretty much, unleashing on the whole school. It's like, well, and they had a brand new weight room. And he kind of just said, here you go. And I kind of jumped right in. It was the best thing I ever did in my career, just because I learned so much. It got to the point where, like, I've seen so many, examples of bad form on the clean. You know what I mean? Eventually, you're just going to get better at teaching it, which really helped me in my career, obviously. But just getting those reps and just jumping, 2 feet into a high school job and just absorbing everything and getting the most experience. Earlier in my coaching career too, I was like, I was a defensive coordinator for a JV team early when I started. And that was my first play calling experience.
Mm-hmm.
So I know it's a high school JV game, but you're practicing play calling, how to manage a game and those things. So getting those experiences can really go a long way.
Oh yeah. People don't understand what that play calling is like. I only called a powder puff game one time, and I think I had like 4 delay games in one quarter, because like it's a lot harder than people think. Like, you got to think on the fly, and it's like, you might think, oh, I'm going to run this play next. And all of a sudden you're like, well, they just gained 20 yards. So now we have to run something completely different than what I was thinking. But my
JV teams that I called plays for they were electric. It was exciting.
JV,
you didn't know what you were going to get. Not everybody knew everything.
That's like in high school. There was a lot of times when you'd see coach kind of start to panic a little bit on the sideline. It was just base black was our base call, and it was just run the base coverage and we'll figure it out next play. But
us would be just 20 blasts. That was our JV coach, 20 blasts. 20 blasts.
Yeah, we had one play my freshman year, 46 pass. That's what we called it. And it was just, I played tight end and I ran a drag all the way across the field, and it worked every freaking time for some reason. But
every time, yeah.
But then you get up to that varsity level, things start to change
quickly.
So I want to talk too about if someone wants to be a strength and conditioning coach, what you would recommend to them, because that would probably be a little bit different, because I feel like there's a lot more that goes into it that you need to learn in order to do that.
Yeah. And that one for sure, 100% be ready to work for free. Especially if you're going to like the major D1 schools. A lot of those places, if you can somehow get into an internship through there, that's kind of the pipeline that shoots you up. You know, that's where you meet a head strength coach. Hopefully, you know, you work your way into a GA position and eventually full-time position. So I had an internship at YSU for summer. I was a strength intern at YSU, and I learned a lot. It was great. But just for me and my time, you know, it was either stay that route and take another GA job, or I got offered a full-time job at Lake Erie. So I ended up taking the full-time job. But yeah, you just getting experience. And like I said, with the high school level too, that's the same thing in the weight room, because that's honestly, if a high school football staff is going to be short-staffed, the first place is going to be in the weight room. And that's really scary if you think about it, because you know, somebody could really seriously injure themselves in there. So like I said, at the high school level, more and more I see too, they're hiring more high school strength coaches too. I know that more high schools are doing that in Ohio. I know that. So yeah, just get in and get experience. That's the first thing, is just meet people, work with people. Don't ever be afraid of, you know, I know what I know and I know what I don't know. You know, I learned very quickly that, you know, you can't just fake it till you make it. I've had people say that, and I'm not a believer in that. You know, if I don't know how to do something, I'm going to tell you I don't know how to do something, and we're going to get it figured out. So
yeah, and you talked about, like, we've talked a little bit about the bad form, and like, you know, it is scary the fact that you look at that is where high schools are short-staffed, is in the weight room, because I mean, even you see it all the time. Football players will come in and have terrible form, and it's not necessarily their fault. They just weren't taught the right way. So they have to like relearn their form and be taught the correct form for things. And that is a very scary thing.
Yeah. And it's something that has to be, I mean, I don't know. I've been cleaning and doing snatch, you know, Olympic lifts probably since I was in the 5th or 6th grade. I had a really good strength coach that I grew up with. But I mean, all that time, you know, I'm over 30 now, and I'm still working on things in my form. There's still things that are never perfect. So to just throw high school kids in a situation where you're not teaching them any form and expect them to move weight, things like that. That's always, even with you guys, you know, even at the college level, because not everybody comes from those programs and has those strength coaches. So usually it's always a form conscious deal when you're doing anything Olympic lifting.
Yeah, because I mean, I watched you even tell people to take the weight off the bar, and they have to do just the bar until they actually get their form down. And you know, some of them might get upset by it, but when you look at the bigger picture, if you don't learn the correct form for things, you could honestly you're going to get hurt, and you're going to feel it when you are 30 years old, and it'll hit you a lot more. You don't want to screw yourself up. It hurts your pride a little bit, but at the same time, sometimes you got to let go of your pride and just understand that I need to learn this, because it will better you in the future. You
don't do us any good hurt.
Yeah.
Can't do anything with you if you're hurt. We can't play you. You know, we need every guy that we got. You know how we run our roster, and you know what I mean. We're very good. We're very good on special teams again this year, by the way. But
I don't know. You got a lot of spots to fill, considering I played every special team. I'm just kidding.
Exactly. Yeah.
Well, the only special team I never got to do was the one that you actually ran.
No, for sure.
So
Yeah. Oh, you don't want to be on PAT field goal, Nixon.
no, I'm good. I'll stick with my punt and kickoff. Those were my two favorites. And kickoff return wasn't bad, but that was my first ever. That was my wake-up call to college football. I was in the center spot, kickoff return, freshman year, under the lights against Otterbein. Got my drop, came back. I actually did put my foot in the ground, but then I kind of hesitated because I was a little freshman and I was scared shitless and just got put on my ass. And I was like, well, there's college football.
There it is. That's the best way to start right there.
Yeah, it was, but it was definitely, I remember going into the meeting and it was minus, everybody had minuses on that first play. So I want to move into, I have my final questions that I like to ask before we get into Motivation Monday. And the first one I want to ask you is, I ask all my guests these three questions. The first one is, who is your biggest inspiration?
Oh, my biggest inspiration is probably 100% my wife. She is 100% probably the toughest, strongest person I ever met in my life. And she's 100% keeps us going for sure.
She's definitely got that Delaney in her.
Yeah.
So, and then the other one that I want to ask are, what are the goals of Joe Aichele going forward? Because I like to stress the importance of goals on this podcast. So what are your goals going forward? And it almost is me holding you accountable for your goals.
Oh, I have been on this quest for a while now, but I want to snatch my body weight. Full power snatch my body weight. I was working up my max until I hit 170 back in the spring, and it tweaks my back a little bit. So summer I really pulled back, but I'm losing weight now. So I'm thinking hopefully that snatch number's around 195, 200 pounds. That's the goal.
See, you have it down to a number, and it might fluctuate, might change a little bit, but that's the thing that I want to point out again is that goal has a quantifiable number with it.
Yeah. If I hit 195 at a good snatch, I'll call it a goal for sure.
Mm-hmm. So the other one I like to ask is one of my favorite, and it usually gets a very unique answer. It sometimes gets a very unique answer. But if you could go back in time and tell yourself one thing, what would it be? Not go back and change anything, but just give 16-year-old you a little piece of advice that would help you through life.
Oh man, 16-year-old me?
Yeah, younger you. Yeah, we'll say 16 to 18.
First thing I tell them to slow down. I used to drive like an idiot when I was 16, 17 years old. I grew up on all them back roads too, man. I'm lucky I'm still here. So first, slow down. But two would be just I don't know, not that I haven't valued people, but just appreciate people, be kinder to people. Because there is, as you know, me do have a temper a little bit. So I definitely think just be kinder to people would be good advice.
Yeah, because it's really hard to build those bridges that you burned. And we've talked a lot on this episode already about the fact that, you want to build those connections, you want to network, you want to get to know people. You may not necessarily, because I look at people that I never thought I'd get along with, people that I'd never thought I'd even be with, and then crazy things happen. And then you end up, you don't want to burn those bridges too early. You don't want to burn those bridges really at all, because you never know when that bridge, you might need it. You might need to cross that bridge.
Exactly.
But now we're going to slide in to my favorite segment of this podcast, which is Motivation Monday. This is the point in the episode where I like to allow my guests to give a little motivational bump as our Roughnecks listeners listen on. This episode will be Thursday, so it's actually a Motivation Thursday. As they listen on Thursday morning at 7 a.m. Eastern time when this episode comes out, whether they're on their way to work, whether they're going to the gym, whatever it is. So what do you got for Motivation Thursday?
So something that really just always I cling on to, I'm a big Goggins guy. I've read one of his books, but really just embrace the suck. Whatever you're doing, it's going to suck, no matter what you're doing. If I'm going to go out and run 4 miles tomorrow, at some point I'm going to go, this sucks. But find a way to enjoy that. Somehow embrace it, enjoy it, and overcome it.
Because eventually too, I've looked at this, like those things that used to suck, they get easier. Like that, I guarantee you that first time you ran 4 miles wasn't easy. It probably sucked. Now, I'm not saying it's easy now, but it's a hell of a lot easier than it was that first time you ran it.
100%. Yeah.
Yeah. So embracing the suck too. That is Shane Quinn actually brought that to this episode as well when he was on. But that embracing the suck, as you can see, we have reoccurring themes on this podcast. And my thing that I figured out, I think early in life, was when you hear it from a lot of different people, it's something you might want to take note of, like something you might want to listen to because it's probably valuable.
Yes.
But
just everything. You're going to have to work in some way, shape, or form. You're going to have to work. A portion of it's going to suck, but get it done, baby.
Oh, no one ever said that life was easy. I figured that out real quick after college. But with that, that's a wrap on the 48th episode of this podcast. I am sure that you will probably be on for a third reappearance, but I appreciate you coming on. I appreciate you coming on. I will be at games. I will be cheering on Ohio Wesleyan, of course, because, I graduated from there and played there for 4 years. So, I figured I'd at least come to a few games. You guys actually play right in my backyard this year on a night game there in Denison, because that's 15 minutes down the road from me.
Oh, nice.
That's why I also have a special hatred for Denison. So, but that's a wrap on this episode. Thank you for tuning in. As I've mentioned before, we will have special episodes coming up. I got another episode coming out on Monday, working on scheduling that. It should be with a guy who works with Ohio State strength and conditioning wrestling team. He should be on. I'm not going to say who it is for sure because I don't want to say it and then things not work out. I have some sweet guests lined up for the month of September as well. Some Granger Smith type guys. They work for Granger Smith. So I will have them on. And I'm also going to be doing a military law enforcement appreciation and have 2 episodes with law enforcement officers. Probably, I don't have those scheduled yet, but working on those as well. September 21st is definitely an episode you'll probably want to tune into, as we will have Texan Teddy back on the podcast for, I don't know how many times he's been on, considering he was my co-host at one point, but it is the 1-year anniversary of the Roughnecks Podcast. Speaking of which, we're coming up on your year anniversary of the first time you were on this podcast. Would have been the 28th, I believe. But Teddy will be back on. We'll have another episode. We have no clue what's going to happen there. That could go one of 2 ways with Teddy. But thank you for tuning in. As always, you know the deal. Life is hard and is going to knock you down just like a bull does to a bull rider. Don't let that bull of life walk all over you. Get up, grab the bull by the horns, and take control of your life. Until Monday, Roughnecks out. Thank you for listening to this week's episode of the Roughnecks Podcast. If you like this episode, be sure to subscribe, rate, and review, and then also subscribe to the Roughnecks YouTube channel. If you want to be a guest or have a guest that you would like to hear from, then shoot me an email at roughneckspodcast@gmail.com or message me on social media on Instagram at Roughnecks Podcast or Twitter at RoughnecksPod C1 or Facebook at Roughnecks Podcast. Life is hard and will knock you down like a bull. Don't lay there and let it run you over. Get up, grab the bull by the horns, and take control of your life. Till next week, Roughnecks out.
Oh, thank you.